The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, X-Zone TV, and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X-Zone Nation, my first guest tonight is Thomas Sheridan, and we're going to be talking about puzzling people, the labyrinth of the psychopath. Joining me now from Dublin, Ireland, is Thomas Sheridan. And Thomas, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm currently living in Ireland after a life of working around the world. I was born here, but I've been working all over. And I've been in the music industry. I was a musician in New York and in Ireland. And I'd worked as a graphic designer, mainly on Wall Street. And that's how my interest in the subject of psychopaths began. I was working for a very large Wall Street investment firm, and a guy I became friends with there. We became buddies mainly because he knew I was a musician and he wanted to learn how to play guitar. But I was kind of wary of this guy. He kind of had this glibness about him. I found him quite difficult to work with. But he suddenly changed one day and became incredibly friendly. And we sort of became friendly. And then one day out of the blue, he announced to me. He says, "Thomas, I'm a psychopath. I'm a clinically diagnosed psychopath." And I burst out laughing, and I was like, "Well, what, like Norman Bates, you kill people?" And he goes, No, it's not like that at all. And then he proceeded to tell me about his experiences. He'd come from a wealthy Manhattan family, and he'd literally driven his parents and his family crazy from the time he was a child, yeah. And one of the things he did one weekend that got him diagnosed was that he stole his father's best friend's Porsche and drove it up to Boston and went crazy with his mother's credit cards. And his family had enough, and they sent him for clinical diagnosis. And they determined using the CAT scan and doing the checklist that he was a psychopath.
labyrinthpsycho.blogspot.com.
So that became my first.
Thomas, what exactly are psychopaths? Are they all serial killers?
No, in fact, almost none of them are. The vast majority of psychopaths, and remember, they're very, very common in society, are people who go through life with no conscience. They have no remorse. They take advantage of anyone they come into contact with. They have no feelings, and they have no sense of responsibility for what they've done to others. They use things like invented personas, and they create almost like caricatures within themselves to manipulate certain people and situations. They're chameleons in their behavior. They will often use things like pity in order to manipulate people, to control them. Initially, when you first meet a psychopath, you'll get a sob story about how difficult their life was before they met you. And there may be some element of truth to this, but it'll be wildly overblown. They'll often have mysterious past. They'll move around, changing aliases. They're just basically a predatory consciousness which exists within the human family that for some reason or other seems to view itself inside the human family. And even though their predatory machinations would not necessarily be violent, well, not physically violent, that would be quite rare. Mostly they would be psychologically and emotionally violent, because they'll actually use people and destroy their lives in order to get what they want. And often it's little more than just a power rush. But they can be serial killers, sure. You know, Ted Bundy absolutely was a psychopath, but the vast majority of serial killers tend not to be psychopaths. They're schizophrenics. They're generally not as intelligent. Psychopaths are very, very devious. They plan and they manipulate and they target, and they're extremely dangerous when you're in a relationship with one, because they'll destroy everything from your finances to basically your entire psychology. They're incredibly destructive within the modern workplace, particularly in the office environment, where they will bully, harass, and the tragedy of this is their ruthlessness is seen by today's major corporations as an attribute that should be exploited. So they generally will move up into management, and on the way there they'll ruin many lives in the different departments, both among their subordinates and their peers. So that's what a psychopath is, a predatory human consciousness that exists within society that preys upon us.
You know, while you were giving out the description, it sounded like a lot of politicians that I know. Jeez.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what politics is.
How common are psychopaths in today's society?
How common? According to, in the Western society, according to the American Journal of Psychiatry, it's 1 in every 22 people is psychopathic to some degree. In the European Union and in the UK, it's been established as between 1 in 25 and 1 in 30. So the average is, in the Western world, it's 1 in every 25 people is a psychopath.
Is it hard to recognize a psychopath? For example, if there were, let's say, 1,000 people in a room, obviously the odds are, based on statistics, that there would be psychopaths in there. Would we be able to spot them in a crowd?
Yes, you will, and that was the main reason I wrote this book, was for that reason. It functions as a guidebook to identify them, because they're very difficult for a normal person to identify, because for the average person it's extremely difficult to get your head around the concept of a human being that looks like you, is dressed like you, maybe quite charming and very sort of witty and personable, but underneath the surface is a completely cold-blooded, ruthless predator who has no conscience. And it's very difficult for a person to get that. However, they are uncannily very similar. Through my work and through my website, people who contact me, it's quite incredible how similar they are. They have traits and behaviors within their pathology that makes them not easy to recognize, but certainly someone like me who's like really gone deep into the subject and has worked with them
us.
And knows.
Let me ask you this at this point: what was behind you writing Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of a Psychopath?
About in 2008, I decided to write a screenplay about demonically possessed individuals who were actually psychopaths, and they were preying on individuals with a Wall Street investment bank, based on my experience of having worked as a graphic designer in many Wall Street firms. And I put up a website that was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek website dealing with the idea that psychopaths were demonically possessed individuals. And what astounded and shocked me was that I was literally besieged with many, many emails from people all over the world who absolutely were saying, oh no, they really are demonically possessed. And this amazed me, because some of these people I spoke to, many of them were quite well educated individuals. One gentleman that contacted me in Australia, and he said, okay, I'm not going to say they're demons, but he says, what's in there, what's behind that skin is not one of us. And so this is how the book came about. I wanted to get to some clarity. What are they? So I read every single textbook, every research paper. I went very deeply into the science, and I still don't know what causes them or what makes them. The conclusion I've come to now, and I can tell you many top people working in the field will tell you off record the same thing, that they're a different kind of human being. It's almost like there's an evolutionary tangent that has thrown them off. They're a predator, as Dr. Robert Hare in Canada, who's the main researcher in the field in the University of British Columbia, he calls them an intraspecies predator, and I think that's an excellent way to describe them. Many people, even like, it's remarkable how many people think they were demonically possessed beings, based mainly on how they could change persona quickly. You could have a situation where somebody was married to a guy for years, or a woman, and they were subject to a specific loving, kind persona, and then instantaneously this person would change and suddenly demonstrate no affection, no feelings of love, an absolute disconnect from the person they were in the relationship with. And the effects it would have on these people would be very, very similar to post-traumatic stress. In fact, it would be post-traumatic stress disorder. You could be in a relationship for 10 years with someone, deeply in love, and then suddenly they're a different human being because they've moved on. They found somebody else to prey on. Or they're in a difficult situation. The police are after them and they've suddenly got to make a run for it. And these people are, will start being systematically destroyed by these. They do things like gaslighting, where they will change your sense of reality. They will start projecting their faults upon you, and they will literally rewire your brain. In fact, that's exactly what does happen.
All right, so am I safe in saying that a person who is a psychopath is suffering from a mental illness?
Oh yeah, they're absolutely they're probably the most mentally ill people on the planet in terms of their pathology, in terms of danger. Mm-hmm. They're far more dangerous than he's the poor schizophrenic guy walking down the street talking to himself. Or you meet these people who are like in the city parks who are homeless. They're far more dangerous than them because they hide behind a mask of sanity. And this is what makes them such ruthless predators. They have no, they totally take you by surprise. They can often be very glib and charming, but yet if you actually put them under a CAT scan and do specific tests upon them, one of the most common tests they do is they show, it's almost like a form of like reverse behavioral therapy, where they will show images to a normal person. Suppose like me or you, we're watching a screen and one picture shows a couple on a beach holding hands, the next picture shows a bunch of kittens, and the next scene shows a guy being executed brutally in a war. Our brains will actually like light up in specific regions depending on how our emotions, our brain processes the emotion, and it will change completely for a normal person from one side of the brain to the other. With a psychopath, there's no change. The entire brain stays the same and stays neutral, regardless of what the situation they confront. So that's what they're very, very fearless that way.
So let me ask you this, Thomas. People who claim to be possessed, are they psychopaths? And does this mean that a number of people who claim to have paranormal experiences are actually experiencing either a mental breakdown, a mental shutdown, or mentally ill?
Well, it's a very complicated thing, and I do believe that I have people who do think that way, because I can tell you something. About 10 years ago, I was working in Italy, and in the appendix of my book, I have a lot of information about the allegorical nature and the metaphorical nature of psychopaths and folklore, which they would appear as things like the jinn or succubus, that kind of thing. That's how they would have been rationalized in the pre-scientific age. But about 10 years ago, I was working in Italy, and on my weekends off, I used to, because I'm an artist, I would go around visiting these stately homes of these Italian nobles from the early Renaissance period, and I noticed they would have the most horrific paintings within their apartment, in their houses, particularly over the headboards of the bed. These beds would be given to married couples, and on the painting would be images of like a plague in Umbria or the executions of prisoners in Lombardy. And they would conceive their children under this, this is how people say you were a normal average Italian peasant or in any country back then. You could not believe the heartlessness and cruelty of these people. So this is where the idea of like the evil, demonically possessed sort of noble came from, like Prince Prospero in Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death, which was played by Vincent Price in that fantastic movie. This is how people would have rationalized that. I don't think they were.
Explanation. Thomas Sheridan is our guest of this hour. He is the author of Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. His website is labyrinthpsycho.blogspot.com. Thomas, what is the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath?
It's the same thing. It's just the same name for two different terms. Traditionally, psychopath was the common term used. Went back to Harvey Kleck. Well, actually, the term was used back as far back as the Victorian era, but it came into common usage around the Second World War when an American psychiatrist called Harvey Cleckley wrote a book on the subject, and psychopath became the common term. And that was the one until Alfred Hitchcock made the movie Psycho, which really isn't about a psychopath, where Norman Bates was more a schizophrenic. And so in order to create the confusion, to deal with the confusion, what they did was they invented the term sociopath. So it was a socially normalized psychopath. And that was very popular for a while, and it was quite normal, and still is, but now it seems to be, in the latest version of the mental health professionals' diagnostic manuals, it's going back to psychopath again. So there's no difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, and it's the same name for the same pathology.
Why are people so emotionally and psychologically damaged by their experience, by their encounter, by their relationship with a psychopath?
It's a deeply, deeply traumatic experience. You really are a changed person after you've been through the psychopathic control system, both on a personal level, or if you're in a job, or even if you're in an organization. It can be extremely, extremely difficult, especially in the job. A lot of people who contact me, bullying in the workplace, particularly among senior management by psychopaths, it leaves these people damaged. I've had letters and emails from people basically saying they're not the same person they were before the psychopath came into their life. It just changes your sense of, you see, we're all brought up with this notion that everybody has some good in them, and it's in many ways it's a fallacy that's put into our minds, because there are 1 in 25 people out there in this world who have absolutely no good in them, and when we enter into the world, we become lambs to the slaughter, and very often, either through relationships, through the workplace, or even putting your faith in a politician or even somebody, a business person, if that what blows up in your face and you're betrayed, it can actually change your sense of self. And people who come out of these relationships, particularly if they've been married to them, they're usually extremely damaged by it.
Exo Nation, my guest this hour is Thomas Sheridan. We're talking about Thomas's book, Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. And Thomas, can psychopaths be cured or reformed, or are they a lost cause?
They're a lost cause. It's a terrible thing to actually come to terms with this, but the scientific facts are indisputable. They've done the CAT scans and the diagnostic testing on elderly psychopaths in homes, and they still the psychopathic scale. In fact, they're even a major problem within elderly homes. They'll actually be, you often hear stories in like retirement homes of patients being attacked or poisoned or robbed by other patients. Very often they're the elderly psychopaths who will be doing that. There's no hope.
Is there any way that people can be tested to see whether or not they are a psychopath before they're given any job with major responsibility, or any job that deals with public trust, or even, like we were talking about, abuse within senior citizen homes?
Yeah, we're walking on very thin ice here because of there are tests you can do. In fact, determining if someone is psychopathic is probably one of the easiest sort of mental disorders to determine. The science is actually very sound on it, both through questioning, interview process, and also through the CAT scan testing. You can literally determine right away, not right away, but determine that they are psychopathic quite clearly. Now, should we test people before they go into certain jobs? On a sort of a civil rights aspect, I'm quite against it. I don't think people should be automatically tested, for the simple reason that, I'm sure there are psychopaths out there. In fact, I know there are psychopaths out there who are behaving themselves, not because they care about others, they just simply don't want to get into trouble. So if someone is a psychopath and they know they're a psychopath, they all know they're psychopaths. But if they're not bothering anybody, then we should leave them alone. We shouldn't be forcing them to take tests.
But
however,
we give, when people apply for certain jobs, for example, members of parliament, there's a complete background check done on these people. So why shouldn't people who have the the trust and are given the guardianship of people under them, why shouldn't they be tested to see if they're a psychopath? Because if they're a sleeper psychopath, or if they're a behaving psychopath, they get the job, they come out of their shell, a lot of people could get hurt.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I hate the idea of psychopaths being in government, or even in things like working a nuclear power plant. Not so much that they would be dangerous in a sort of like an evil sense, but simply that they're kind of lazy and irresponsible, that they might just leave the desk of the nuclear power plant or the air traffic control station and cause people to be killed, because they're fundamentally very incompetent and lazy in many things they do. They're easily distracted. Yes, I would love to see politicians tested. We definitely would have a lot less wars and everything in the world. We definitely have a better, social systems for people to live within. I can't see it ever happening, but in situations like that, even in the militaries all around the world don't actually want psychopaths within the military. Now, that sounds surprising at first, but the reason is because they're so unreliable. They will do things like they will desert, or they will go off and rob civilian homes and, assault civilian women. They won't be taking part in the battle. They won't also help their comrades. They don't have a sense of comradeship. So there's lots of places where we shouldn't have them, but unfortunately they're there. I would love to see those kinds of people tested, but I really can't see it happening. It's just the case of the lunatics are running the asylum, and they're not going to change that.
Is a person born a psychopath, or is it genetic?
The people are born psychopaths. What happens is they're growing up, and as they're children, they start realizing that people around them have these things called feelings, emotions, compassion, bonding, empathy, and they're completely abstract concepts to them. They don't know what they are. So by the time they reach puberty, what they do is they decide they're going to use this to manipulate others, because it gives them a tremendous amount of power. But is it genetic? The science is still out on that one. It seems to be genetic in some cases, but overwhelmingly it's the pathology just seems to appear in families out of the blue. You'll have many cases of a family where there was no psychopathic individuals ever in the family, not in the grandparents, not in the parents, and then suddenly one arrives. And now, in terms of psychopaths being made, I wouldn't say you could create a psychopath through, say, abusive childhood or through a difficult war situation, but you could make them worse. You could make someone who's not a psychopath behave like that, but they still wouldn't be a psychopath because they could be cured. They're just messed up from their experiences. It's almost like they're in a sort of a self-defense mode, and they may demonstrate the pathology of a psychopath, but they're truly not psychopaths. If you did a CAT scan test and everything, psychopath, but those people can be cured, where a psychopath can never be cured.
Who, in your opinion, are some examples of psychopaths in history?
In history, let me think back. Well, Genghis Khan obviously was. He was a guy who just decided that everyone should be killed in Asia to just suit his political agenda. He also fathered enormous amounts of children. In fact, everyone in Asia who was the surname Khan is a direct descendant of him. They're very sexually promiscuous because sex to them is another power trip. So Genghis Khan would be one. I'm not so sure about Hitler. I just think Hitler was more of a schizophrenic. Leon Trotsky was absolutely a psychopath, and he was an extremely dangerous individual. In many ways, he was worse than Stalin because he, like many psychopaths, he paraded behind this image of sort of the good communist. But in reality, he was involved in some of the most horrific massacres and atrocities of the Soviet era, including taking part in executions himself. He was the one who said, just basically shoot anyone you find, put fear into them, and that way they won't question the state. So absolutely, Leon Trotsky goes down in history, and many industrialists as well. Like Nelson Rockefeller, when his treatment of the unions in the United States, he was definitely one. J.P. Morgan was another. His whole philosophy that people should be kept in fear of losing their home, and then they'll do exactly what we tell them. That's an extremely psychopathic mentality. So yeah, and anywhere there's big business people or big political leaders who left a trail of misery behind them, generally, but not always, sometimes they were just insane, but generally insane in this traditional sort of schizophrenic sense, like Hitler. Generally, they would be psychopaths.
Tell me, Thomas, do you think that society is becoming more psychopathic? Thomas, are you there?
Yeah, I lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Okay, I was asking you, do you think that society is becoming more psychopathic?
I think it's becoming more proto-psychopathic in the sense that people who are not psychopaths themselves, they're actually emulating psychopathic behavior due to what basically these appalling TV shows. You'll see an awful lot of shows on the TV at the moment about vampires.
Yes.
Vampires are allegorical psychopaths. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, he based the character of Dracula on a British actor he was actually the agent for, and this guy was a notorious womanizer, abuser, and user of people. And how Bram Stoker rationalized this relationship was by writing this story of this actor, whose name escapes me right now, as a blood-sucking individual who preyed on people. So a lot of these vampire shows on TVs they're very negative in the sense they're not even kind of like the vampire shows that we grew up with, like the old movies. They're not like that at all. They're very sadistic, they're very sexually highly charged. They create this notion where people, if you want something, you take it now. You go to any extreme to get it, and you're shown as the more ruthless and bloodthirsty and cold you are, the more sexy you are, and that's extremely psychopathic. So people are, and also like things like media and advertising and the fashion industry, they encourage people to be very, very psychopathic. It's just instant gratification. What I want, my way or the highway, and you don't matter. So yes, and that's a very disturbing trend. We must protect our consciousness from this.
So how do we guard our children, the youth of today, again, from turning into psychopaths? Because, the werewolf movies, the vampire movies, they are big box office successes with kids.
Yeah, they're like the pop stars of today.
Exactly.
The thing is that to try and keep them grounded, I really don't know what the answer is. Try to keep them more, I don't know what the word spiritually, but sort of consciously focused in terms of like make sure they're not watching TV constantly. If they have impulses to buy things, try to explain to them that maybe you don't really need it. A lot of parents today, if a kid wants something, they instantly buy it for them, and that's also training them to like this gratification thing. As a parent has a just as much of a responsibility to nurture a child's consciousness as they do their welfare, to clothe and feed them and educate them and all the rest. So I would tell parents to be very careful of what their children are doing. Try to introduce them to a more healthy lifestyle. Bring them around nature. Take them camping. Life. Get them into hobbies that take them away from the television. If you see them starting to emulate these psychopathic behaviors that they've learned off TV, just gently explain to them that it's probably not what they want to do. And especially peer pressure. If you can try and teach your child about peer pressure, a lot of this comes from just raising the child's self-confidence. If a child grows up with a good self-confidence, they won't generally fall for this stuff. They may for a while as a trend. We've all done it as kids. But generally, try and help them and help their self-esteem, and that's the best way to protect them. Constantly just keep an eye on them, nurture their consciousness.
How about the people who like to participate in the goth style of living? Would you classify them as psychopaths?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because I'm an ex-goth myself. I used to play in a goth band. And back then, in the 80s, goth was actually a very innocent scene. It was more based on sort of Victorian melodrama, like Mary Shelley, and, like the goth girls I knew, they used to dress up. They were pretty girls, used to dress in lace and long flowery dresses. The guys used to just wear black t-shirts, and it was very, very innocent. And then somewhere along the line, particularly in, say, the last 10 years, goth has sort of become this almost transhumanist machine kind of S&M scene, where the imagery is very, very violent, often shows people with their faces broken open,
all right, my
with
friend,
studs in them.
All right, you and I will continue this conversation talking about being a psychopath and the possible.
I would say in the modern goth scene, absolutely, there's definitely a psychopathic tendency, and I think psychopaths are have been drawn to that scene, which I guess, as I said earlier on, was initially quite innocent and actually and quite it was a healthy scene. Most of the kids I knew when I was a goth were reading books and were reading poetry, and a lot of them were quite well-grounded children who young people who just like to dress up. But ever since the like of the Marilyn what's his name, Manson, and that element came into it, which was sort of like a hybrid of goth and sort of like death metal. It seemed very formulaic and very, very big business was behind it. And ever since that point, some very negative and unhealthy individuals have been drawn into the scene. And I look at the latest like magazines and goths and stuff like that, and it's just extremely debased. It's really, really, absolutely psychopathic. And the same thing is happening to the steampunk scene. That was actually the same as the goth scene. It was very innocent, dress up, escapism, harmless fun, really was no problem, and the same kind of vicious, sadistic S&M elements are coming into that as well. So yeah, once the scene takes off, for some reason, both at the top of the scene and at the bottom, these predators seem to move in and take it over and mold it to their pathology.
Got about a minute left. What would you like the readers to walk away with after reading your book?
That the life is much more healthier than what TV and mass media tells us it is, that we can actually build a great life for ourselves, and we can avoid toxic people, and we can learn to protect our consciousness and just make the most of this beautiful world we live in without being sucked into the psychopathic control grid, be it through commercial media, politics, and just learn to live a better quality of life with the right kind of people, and we'll never attract these individuals into our lives ever again. If they read my book, it basically shows you how to protect yourself from these individuals.
Thomas, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Great having you with us. Give our listeners your website and where they can buy a copy of your book.
The book is called Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. They can get it anywhere in the world, but the best place and the cheapest at the moment is on any of the local Amazon domains. So wherever you live, it'll be amazon.ca or .com or .uk. You can also get it at any bookstore as well. If they don't have it in stock, just go in there and they'll order it, and just tell them the name and that they'll order it for you if you don't want to deal with credit cards and things like that.
Thomas, take care of yourself. Thank you very much for joining us. I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone. Great talking to you, sir.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Good night now. Exonation, Thomas Sheridan has been my guest. labyrinthpsycho.blogspot.com. He's the author of Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, on the Talkstar Radio Network. Don't go away.